Hi Adam, how are you?
I'm great, thanks Stephen. Good to see you.
Yep, you too. So we're back doing this in person rather than on Teams again this month, as people seem to prefer the Q&A done this way. We also had more than 1,700 people watching the last time around, which is great. So we'll try and stick to this format where we can. Let's get straight into the questions, which we've had submitted. And question number one comes from John Baxter, team lead on the Labour Ward theatre, who is retired but on the bank as he has had no pension date. So he asks, why do we not have a pensions officer here in NHS Grampian? John says, I'm asking this as it's been what feels like a real mess for me. There's no clear path and I've had to rely on others who have recently retired for information on their choices so I could make my own choice. John also mentions he has experienced issues with delays in the pensions forms being sent to the Scottish Public Pensions Agency.
Right, John, thanks for the question. So I think first off, I'm sorry there's been a delay and I guess your retirement plans haven't quite come and you're back on the bank. So sorry to hear that, but really pleased you're back working with us. So I think a couple of things there. I think first off, I would acknowledge that the choices, I think you made reference to the choices, and I think for those that are listening in, this relates to the different pension schemes and the options you get as to what you choose if you're, if you've been in both the 96 scheme, was it 94 scheme, whatever, 95 scheme, and then obviously the more recent one that came in the last few years, and with the remedies now moved on. So first off, I think the choices are difficult. We're not allowed to give advice on that. So I think the suggestion of a pensions officer, we wouldn't be able to advise you, and that's part of the regulation that we're held by in terms of the pension scheme. However, there are lots of people that can give you good advice. So, we recommend that people seek help from an independent financial advisor around things like the choices to, help individuals, because it's a very individual thing. So I think that's the first bit. I think the second bit in your question around the sort of the planning. So there is a policy, a Scottish policy on pensions, which I think sets out timescales and things. And again, I would encourage all line managers to make sure they're up to speed. So as staff are thinking about retiring, we can guide people to the right documents. And then of course, individuals need to make those choices about what they're doing. And I know there are timelines when you've got to submit things, or else it just runs out of time. It's quite a slow process working between the pension agency and the organisation, all those sorts of things. So if we can make sure people are timely in their submissions. I know our payroll team work really well and, absolutely get things in time, but we all have a role in that. So probably just to summarise that, sorry, because I spoke rather long, independent advice, we're not allowed to give advice around choices. Something about everyone, managers and people retiring, checking the policy, making sure we follow the timelines as we get all the different documents in place, and of course then us as an organisation playing our part in those timelines. So I hope that covers it, John, and thanks for the question.
Okay, thanks Adam. Question two is from Reid, a service manager, who says, it has been some time since there have been any updates on the plumbed water dispensers for staff. A trial was announced this time last year, and an update would be appreciated.
Yeah, thanks, Mary. We ran a trial. The trial ran. We tested the plumbed water dispenser in 3 areas. One of them was a great success because the dispenser was kept up to standard. As we all know, with water in healthcare environments, there's lots of challenges with water, and the other 2 weren't okay. So what we've agreed through facilities and through their advice and their expertise is that we will put those plumbed water dispensers in higher risk areas, so where the normal tapped drinking water's not how we need it, like maybe it's too warm or not accessible or whatever, and clearly areas where the the background temperature's too hot, which again we know is a real issue. So on a risk assessed basis, we will run them, and it'll be really key that they're kept up to standard and clean and things. And then in other areas, we will maintain that normal drinking water through the standard tap that allows drinking water. So some progress, not universally perfect at all, but a step in the right direction. And Mary, please, ask the question again in a few months, and we can give a further update following the end of the trial, now the implementation bit, and we can keep everyone posted on progress on that.
Okay, thanks Adam. I hope colleagues find that helpful. So question 3 comes from Clive Matthews, Unit Operational Manager in Surgery 1. And so Clive's been in touch to say, I'm aware of a number of recent examples of planned spend being rejected by finance and procurement colleagues as it has been deemed non-essential. Can you explain what counts as non-essential spend and who agreed this, as this categorisation could potentially cover significant amounts of what the NHS delivers? On a related note, how does this situation fit with delegated budgetary responsibility, particularly where the local multidisciplinary team are projecting a significant underspend and feel that the expenditure is, in fact, essential for service sustainability?
Yeah, I'm really, Clive, thanks for putting this question in, and just purely by chance, I have happened to have been with Clive since he sent the question in, but I'm really keen to answer it for everyone to hear, because I think there's a few really important points in there. So I guess first off, there's just a wee reminder of context, isn't there? So at the moment, we're projecting an overspend of something like £70 million. So we're way beyond our 59 million outer limit already agreed with government. Bear in mind, they'd really only given us brokerage for 15 million. So we're in real financial challenge. And on a side note, we're making really good progress. So thanks to everyone who is contributing to that. And we're seeing some positive signs, but much more to come. So there's a little bit of context there. The essential spend was agreed through my team meeting. So through the chief executive team meeting, we have agreed a number of financial approaches. We've done lots of work with GAPF each month about the financial position. So again, lots of it in partnership. Essential spend, I think, has got a real judgment in it. And there's something about how do we try and hold really tight on the resource spend where there is some level of discretion. And again, there will be a big grey area. And I think the bit that I find really difficult is Clive's second point about supporting people to still have delegated authority when we put these, to be honest, quite clumsy rules in place to try and slow the spend down. So, and that is a real tension for me. I'm, as people know, I'm a real believer in delegated authority and power and all those sorts of things. And so, big central rules do feel really difficult where we're taking away discretion. And I'm hoping these rules will be in place for as short a time as possible, but we absolutely need stuff in place at the moment that is slowing the monthly spend. So a real tension for me as a leader in the system, and clearly a frustration for Clive. And Clive talked to me all through it actually when I met him, and I can absolutely understand Clive's frustration. I think the bit to really hold on to is, where there's something that's really key and your local judgment is, remember, we're not a faceless organisation. Procurement are our colleagues and they're just doing what we've asked them to do. So again, there's no challenge or problem in actually ringing them up around something that you think is an exception to try and work away as a single team to work away at that. So that's quite uncomfortable, because it's that tension between what we need to achieve as a whole organisation, whilst absolutely wanting everyone in their local teams to be able to deliver, and with all the knowledge they've got and how that they're part of a bigger system works.
Question 4 comes from one of the civil contingencies team who says, since the last gas Adam, we've seen the impact of the global internet outage. While our systems weren't affected on that occasion, would Adam be willing to take the opportunity to remind people of the importance of having effective backup plans in place?
Yeah, what a great thing to prompt me on and for our conversation here. So thank you, whoever asked that in the civil contingency team. I think we've got lots of pretty decent contingency plans, and I guess my perpetual worry is, are they good enough? Have we tested them recently enough? Have we checked from multiple angles that they're going to be okay? I think there's a few things to take this opportunity for. You know, let's all do our cyber security module on TURAS, make sure we all keep remembering that. I think the threat from phishing things is really huge, so keep doing that, keep being up to date. Definitely get our contingency plans right. You know, what do we do if we lose internet, if we lose computer systems? You know, how do we work together? How do we get rapidly in place? And, you know, really key is doing that up front, not when it all happens, then dust them off. So I think that's a really, really important bit for all of us, whatever your role is, to be up to speed on our contingency plans, making sure they're, you know, absolutely up to date and really thoughtful about the multiple angles. And I think finally, with, you know, like so many teams, civil contingencies just do some fantastic work and, you know, help us in lots of unseen things every single day, and you know, absolutely have us ready for the big things. But lots of the work they do on a day-to-day basis is fantastic. So thanks hugely to the civil contingency team for all the work they do.
Thank you. So question 5 is from an anonymous nurse who works in Aberdeen Royal Infirmary. This is a follow-on from the smoking question from episode 3. This colleague was sitting outside the main entrance on the benches next to the ambulance bay and noticed that several people were using them as smoking benches. I would say approximately 6 were members of staff, and even 4 of them were in their uniform. How can we expect patients and visitors to stop smoking outside the hospital buildings when the staff are not going off the premises or changing out of uniform to have a cigarette? Another anonymous member of staff has also expressed concern about patients going for a smoke at the yellow zone entrance and using patient wheelchairs for a seat while they do that.
Yeah, thanks. I think the smoking issues, it's a pernicious issue, isn't it? And you know, I'm very aware of it at the Forresterhill site. I'm sure it's true on many of our sites. So the patient smoking, we don't really have much or any powers to resolve that, but the local authority have some, and we continue to work with the local authority to you know, try and get that enforcement system to work. It's really tricky. It's a really difficult issue. The staff one, I'm much clearer on that. You know, I'm really clear. Our tobacco policy, you know, the staff that are smoking uniforms are breaking one of our rules, and they need to stop. We need to, you know, approach these staff and take corrective action. That's just not acceptable. As the questioner framed it, it's just not okay. So that needs to stop. And again, you know, if we come across staff smoking in uniform, that's a disciplinary offence, I think, in the smoking policy. And we need to, you know, stop that and do that as we would any other regulation that staff are not following or pursuing.
Yeah, thanks Adam. For colleagues that know me, and you know, I've been aware of my involvement in previous versions of the tobacco policy. Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. That if as it's been described by the first anonymous questioner, yeah, you know, the tobacco policy is very clear. You should not be, you know, consuming tobacco, you know, in, you know, at work or in uniform.
Absolutely.
And you know, there are, you know, you should be removing yourself from site and removing yourself, you know, changing out of uniform. So that's very clear. I think I recall in the last issue that we spent much more time talking about the importance of being sensitive, particularly if you're challenging patients or members.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, so it's
and staff as well. Yeah.
It's not an easy set of circumstances to have to work through, but yeah.
And I guess the bit I'd didn't say is, of course, I know if you smoke, it's a really tricky thing and it's tricky to give up. There is help to give up smoking. We've got the lots of our teams that support people to quit smoking. So again, if that's one of the things that would be helpful, reach out and get help from the team that support people to stop smoking.
Okay, thank you. So question 6 is from an anonymous member of staff who works within the Aberdeenshire Health and Social Care Partnership, who says Insch Hospital remains closed by stealth, as the colleague puts it. They ask, why did NHS Grampian not apply for capital funding when that was an option? The window for such applications is now closed, so you've chosen not to submit the case for Insch Hospital. How can this be justified?
Thank you for the question. So Insch Hospital is part of the Aberdeenshire Health and Social Care Partnership, and they've got some very clear plans around Insch and the future of Insch. They were undertaking a needs assessment around capital build and capital funding, and as I understand it, that's progressing, and they're exploring what would the next chapter for Insch look like. Huge support for Insch locally from the community. And I think in the partnership, working with the local community, trying to find the best clear role for Insch and the health and care provision there is really, really important. The current building, it's not shot by stealth, it's not fit for purpose. I think there's a real clear fire hazard. We can't get people in beds around some of the turns and the corridors and things. So it's an important safety feature for patients and staff, and that must be paramount for us. So Aberdeenshire Health and Social Care Partnership working on a plan. The overall capital position for Scotland, it changed very dramatic last year. I think we spoke about this in one of our earlier conversations, didn't we? So there is a stop on capital funding at the moment. I'm sure as that comes back on stream, and it will do at some point, it's not going to be this year, may not be next year, maybe it'll be the year after. I'm sure Aberdeenshire will continue to work locally and with the population and the local teams to come up with the best plan that we can for Insch. So I'm sure, and I'm sure we can get more from Pam and the team if we need to, and maybe share some of that through daily brief as some updates around capital work or something, or probably more appropriately in some Aberdeenshire newsletters and things. But we can certainly feed that back to Pam.
Okay. Thank you. Question 7 is from an anonymous member of staff who works in an admin role. What can be done about the deep ruts in the road when you turn into Forresterhill Road from Ashgrove Road West and exit from Forresterhill Road into Ashgrove Road West? At the traffic lights there, they're getting worse and cannot be good for patients in either patient transport or in ambulances, but are not good for the cars going in and out either.
Yeah. I don't know why I'm smiling. Potholes have been on the news lots recently. I don't know. So it's a terrible challenge. I'd agree. We've committed £300,000 to our road maintenance this year. So we've got teams that work on that in all sites and in all places. And my understanding for the potholes that referenced in your question is they're on the scheme to be dealt with, I understand, in the next few weeks. I don't know if that's sort of next week or the week after, but it's imminent and they're on the schedule to be filled. So hopefully that will, work for a bit. God, what do I know about roads? But my understanding is filling potholes has a fairly limited lifetime. So clearly it's the bigger plan of how we actually do some resurfacing and things will be really key. And again, we can share that as we go forward around some of the bigger resurfacing projects, but the potholes will be filled imminently.
Okay. Thank you. Question 8. So a couple of different members of staff who would like to remain anonymous ask, is there an update on the planning application to change the use of the multi-storey car park on the Forresterhill site? And that planning application is to allow staff to park there permanently.
Yeah. thanks. Really important to keep everyone up to speed on this. No is the short answer. It remains in the process with the council. Ted Reid and the teams are doing a ton of work on it to do all the other bits, but we are waiting for that one bit. And again, we'll not spring anything on anyone. We won't suddenly say you're not allowed. You know, it'll all be measured. If it doesn't turn out as we want, hopefully it'll turn out as we've submitted our application, and we'll just keep everyone up to speed as it unfolds and we find out stuff and information. Yeah.
And sometimes in a situation like this where there is no decision, I guess it is important. So it's, thank you to the colleagues for asking the question, because it's important just to restate that, until there is a decision,
absolutely,
we don't know. So
absolutely.
Thank you. Question 9 is from Sean Cassidy, acting consultant in general acute psychiatry, and says, I think these Ask Adam sessions are a great idea as they're putting a face and humanity to our top brass. After discussing this with a few colleagues, we wondered if there was a flowchart or similar document that would help us understand who's who in the management structure, what they're responsible for, and what their current priorities are.
Thank you. What a really good suggestion. We will get something prepared imminently. Interestingly, for a slightly, maybe it's a slightly different reason, maybe it's not. In my team, we've been talking a bit about being clear who everyone is and particularly what their responsibilities are. I think that was implied in the question, or maybe it was a direct question. So we're doing that, and I know lots of the teams have been working on, getting up-to-date organograms as people can see who's in the team. So we'll get that coming out imminently, and hopefully it'll be useful. And thanks for the feedback. If what we produce isn't helpful, please feed that back as well with what would be, and what would make it more helpful to see how bits of the organisation fit in, and as it were. So hopefully by next time we'll have something on that.
Okay, and yes, the reason I was saying it reminds me of course, we're in the season where teams will be doing, in fact, by the time this video is released, will have done and completed their action plans for IMATHR.
Oh, yeah.
But of course, one of the IMATHR questions talks about the visibility of board members, which isn't always very clearly understood what that means. But as a member of the board, well, both you and I are members of the board, so actually there's biographical information about all the board members on various online places, which I'm sure our corporate comms colleagues will put the appropriate links in the video.
Yeah, great. So, great. And that other bit for the broader teams we'll bring on as quickly as we can. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Question 10 is a short one from one of my colleagues, Jamie Donaldson, who is the elected chair of Staff Side Health and Safety Reps. And Jamie writes, how do you plan to eradicate corridor care and improve staff morale?
Thanks, Jamie. So those that don't know Jamie's one of our full-time partnership representatives, and obviously also a trade union member, as it were. So I know Jamie's committed a ton of time going around wards, trying to see how it feels in wards for people who are looking after patients in non-standard areas, and clearly that's not just corridors, that's in various spaces, but non-standard spaces on the ward. So my thanks to Jamie for that ongoing work. So I think there's several things to try and stop non-standard bed space usage. And it's definitely not an easy approach. So I think our analysis of the hospital system is that we don't have adequate bed capacity. So I hope everyone's heard that. I've been speaking about that a lot. Lots of my leadership team have been speaking about that and really doing all the work on it. I'm not doing the work on it. Obviously the teams are. So broadly, we're short of bed capacity, and however efficient we are in discharge and not having delayed discharges and flow out of the hospital, however efficient we are with that, now our analysis suggests we have a basic capacity gap. And as you all know, we're not sitting with lots of empty wards anywhere. There's not physical capacity just to do it. And of course, even if we had the physical capacity, there's a gap to have enough staff, to have the money to pay for the staff and all those things. So all stuff that you know. So we've got a plan around the bed capacity. We implemented the first part of that, which was an additional 32 beds, which were implemented at the start of this year. And we are continuing to do work on the plan for the other 90 beds. I think our target was to have an additional 120 beds. Paul Baku, who's the senior responsible officer for that work, brought a paper, in fact, to my team meeting just last week on bed capacity. So that's starting again, and it's not a quick fix. So I'm not, pretending we're going to have this all sorted. We're not. This is a really tough thing. So that, I think, is the overall proper solution, is a capacity one, and then alongside that is the things I was mentioning. So it's about us being as efficient as we can. How do we have, really good discharge process? And again, there's lots of improvement work happening on that. How do we continue to work really successfully with the partnerships to have capacity in the community for people to move out? All of the things that we know. So that's the plan, and it's not a quick one. So again, it's something I'm not sitting here feeling like, we've really got it cracked, because we haven't. It's difficult on both physical side, staff side, and money side. So lots of challenge in delivering that. I think in terms of the second part of Jamie's question about morale, that is really, really, really challenging, isn't it? That when you're, I think, probably working in any bit of our system at the moment, it feels incredibly challenging, doesn't it, for lots of reasons, and all of life feels challenging at the moment, doesn't it, with inflation, all the things that have been challenging all of us. And I think one of the things I absolutely hold on to and feel is a really important part of my job is that sense of giving people hope. And in giving hope, we absolutely change the dimension of morale and that sense of can do and what will happen. And how do we give hope? Well, we've got our future looking plan, the plan for the future, which describes a different way of delivering health and care. It changes fundamentally the demand and capacity that is part of what creates the current pressure in our system. And we've got wrapped up in that, lots of innovation, lots of change that will make our daily work different, and I hope different, as it were. And I think the more that we can all think about these things, talk about them, and contribute, this is the really important bit, the bit about having skin in the game, contribute to that future sense, then I think that's the hope that starts to improve morale. For me, the really old-fashioned view of morale would be, if we all had more money and more staff and more this and more that. I'm not sure that really changes it. I think it's something about how we are, how we see the future, and really critically how we are with each other. So what's that sense of, actually, however tough it is, coming to work's a good place because my colleagues are great, the work I do is really good. So I think it's all of those things, and how do we continue to do that? So I guess through the middle of that's that culture bit, isn't it? That I know you're very interested in the culture collaboratives doing for, as part of the organisation, and how do we get that really positive culture despite things being really difficult? So I'm not being naive or dismissive of any of that. It's tough, but actually the culture's the bit that helps us feel that it's okay within that really challenging environment, and that sense of future and hope.
Yeah, so it's about giving hope without perhaps raising false expectations that, for example,
absolutely,
care is going to be eradicated by a particular date and time. So
absolutely, and I hope I'm realistic and straightforward in everything I say. I think there's very few magic bullets that are suddenly going to make stuff all amazing. I think we've got lots of hard yards ahead of us, but I have enormous every team I go and meet, as I go and meet a team every week, and they're all fantastic. You know, they all are working in really tough situations, but without exception, you know, every team has got something hopeful and positive that they're working on, as well as the reward that, you know, every one of our colleagues gets every day from the work they do. You know, I think there's real value that everyone sees in the work they do. So really tough, really tough at the moment.
Oh, thank you. So question 11 is from an anonymous psychologist who works in Royal Cornhill Hospital. And they ask, does any department at NHS Grampian offer training for new line managers in line management processes or duties, or would NHS Grampian consider offering this? For example, processes such as sick leave, reasonable adjustments, time off in lieu, etc.
Yes, we do. So let me direct you to it. So if you go to TURAS, there's a series of modules in TURAS that help people understand, you know, the financial management, the holding people to account, the some of the policy work that we work on in partnership. So absence management, you know, so there's a series of modules that people can go. So go to TURAS and do it. And I think the other thing that's, you know, again, really exciting in its development is the team that Jason Nichol leads. They're doing a ton of work about supporting managers. So again, if you remember last year, we had the year of the manager, and that whole sense of actually, if we support and enable managers to manage well, actually that's great for everyone. And so Jason's doing a bit of work with his team on, you know, how do you get peer support as managers, and I guess worry away things that are challenging you and all those sorts of things. So so TURAS and Jason's team.
Yeah. Okay, thanks Adam. Before we finish today, I know you've acknowledged the work of a couple of teams in your answers so far, but I believe you wanted to say a bit about the people who have been working on the agenda for change non-pay elements over recent months. Yeah,
thanks Stephen. Great prompt for me. So it's really three bits, just to check everyone's got the context. 3 bits for the non-pay elements of the agenda for change settlement from last year. We've got the bit about moving to a 36-hour week. We've got the bit about protected learning, and we've got the bit about the potential for Band 5 nurses to be regraded to Band 6 if their role has changed to that. Myself and Stephen Stephen does tons and co-chairs a group with Tom and stuff, and that's been super, sort of setting the scene. And then a ton of people have been working on those 3 bits. In GAPF, which myself and Stephen co-chair, we've, you know, had updates every single month, and just a power of work. And I think the interesting bit is you can imagine how some of those things might not have seemed like they would demand a lot of work, but it's absolutely mind-boggling, isn't it? The reduction in time, incredibly challenging. The Band 5 to 6, I think we were talking at GAPF yesterday, is going to have, you know, a huge volume of work to for both staff preparing it, managers supporting their teams, and then through our manager partnership arrangements to look at the reviews of the work. So yeah, genuine, really big thanks to everyone that's done that, and we'll see how that all unfolds over the coming weeks and months, won't we, as it keeps progressing. Thanks Adam, and thanks again to colleagues who take the time to submit questions. I gather that there have been 5 other questions submitted, you know, that are quite specific. You know, so we will respond to them, you know, those colleagues directly. But hopefully, you know, well, thanks again for watching, and hopefully find these sessions useful. Yeah, absolutely. You know, thanks Stephen, and I think the questions, I think we got a bit of a prompt from Mike, didn't we, that they were super specific. There was another one about potholes, I think, and hopefully we've done the general bit about potholes today. There was one from someone that called themselves a geek, that was a geeky question about something to do with our recycling and magnets that we use and all sorts of things. I just was really keen to make a comment that I'm delighted we've got, you know, more and more growing interest in recycling and how we work that, and of course the specific question will get answered by the technical team that will know the answers to that. And I think the other one I was just keen to mention, there was a question to do with Murray IJB and Ward 4, and that work's unfolding at the moment. So I think we're going to try and answer that next month when we've got just a bit more information on it, so that there's an ability to answer that fully and transparently in public. So. Thanks
again, Adam, and thanks for watching, and particular thanks to Charles and Andrew for doing all the technical work behind the scenes. So, we shall see you again in another few weeks. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen.